She was mopping the lobby floor when the CEO overheard her speak Mandarin, Spanish, and French like a native. What happened next left the entire company stunned. Most people didn't notice the janitorial staff at Helix Global. Not out of malice, just habit. They came in early, pushing carts, replacing trash bags, wiping conference tables. Background noise. But that Monday morning, something pierced the routine. Ethan Wolf, CEO of Helix, was halfway from the garage to the executive suite when he heard it. "Please go, left the conference hall is on that side," said a woman in flawless Mandarin. Wolf stopped cold. Not because of the language, but because of who said it. Denise, the janitor. Quiet, polite, never made eye contact unless spoken to. She was now calmly speaking to a visiting executive like it was nothing. Then without pause, she turned to another man holding a delivery form. "The conference room B is at the end to the right," she said in Spanish. A vendor overheard and asked her something about mislabeled boxes. She responded in French, guiding him with a faint smile. 3 languages. No hesitation. No notes. Let's say, sir. Just fluency. Wolf's jaw tensed. Not from anger, something else. Guilt, maybe. Surprise, definitely. He had led global expansions, hired teams of translators, and here on his own lobby floor was the most linguistically gifted person he'd seen in years. He took a slow step forward. He wanted to ask her something, anything, but for a moment he couldn't. Because what do you say when the invisible suddenly becomes undeniable? According to me, that moment wasn't just surprising, it was a revelation. A quiet one, but those are often the loudest. If this caught you off guard too, you might want to stick around, because this story's just getting started. Subscribe to Unveiled Wealth to never miss a twist like this. And in that single minute, everything he thought he knew about his company changed. Wolf didn't say anything at first. He just watched her go back to mopping the same quiet rhythm, same steady strokes. But his mind wouldn't stop. Later that day, he asked one of the building supervisors if they knew anything about her. "Denise," they said, "works the morning shift, comes in early, never late, is Hasuan, real quiet." Wolf nodded but didn't say what he was really thinking. That he had walked past Brilliance for years and never looked twice. The next morning, he made sure to take the same route. And again, she was there. This time helping an older visitor find the elevator. Fluent Portuguese. Then minutes later, she corrected a vendor in German. Smooth, natural. Wolf's curiosity turned into obsession. He began asking around quietly. No one seemed to know much. No LinkedIn. No degrees on file. Just a name, Denise Atwater. Custodial staff. So he asked her directly. Caught her in the hallway after she finished wiping the conference glass. "Excuse me," he said. She looked up, startled but calm. "Yes, sir. That was Mandarin yesterday, right?" "Yes, sir. You speak it fluently." "Yes, sir, and Surin. And Spanish, French, Wishard, in Wedden, Portuguese, German, Arabic, one, Italian, Swahili. I also read Latin, but I don't count that." He blinked. "You're telling me you speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." She didn't say it with pride. Just fact. Like she was reciting a supply count. "Can I ask where you learned?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod. "College. Is so woman. I was halfway through my master's in linguistics at Kent State. Then my mom got sick. I left to take care of her. Then my dad passed. Then I had a baby. I worked what I could. Grocery stores, nursing homes, temp jobs. Eventually I got this one. It gave me hours that let me be there for my daughter." Wolf didn't speak. "Just listen." "But I never stopped learning," she added. "I borrowed textbooks, listened to recordings, read foreign papers. I'd clean bathrooms while replaying French interviews on my phone. Language kept me sharp. It made me feel like I still mattered." He asked her to come up to his office later that day. She agreed after a moment's hesitation. There, seated across from his polished desk, she looked small but steady. "I'm going to be honest," he said. "I've led global teams for 20 years. I've hired dozens of interpreters. But I've never seen someone switch between languages like you do. Ever." "Muy bien." She nodded once. Most people never ask. That stuck with him. The next week, Denise helped a Brazilian executive understand a misworded document at the welcome desk. Then corrected a misunderstanding between legal teams on a translated contract. Spanish again. It became clear she wasn't just fluent. She was precise, sharp, tactical. She also started staying a little later. Sometimes sat quietly in the back of strategy meetings pretending to clean, but clearly absorbing everything. Wolf noticed him, and so did others. Whispers began. "That janitor knows Portuguese. She fixed that vendor contract. Why is she talking to Wolf?" But Denise didn't change. She just kept doing her job. Until one day, Wolf saw her explain a complex financial concept clearly and calmly to a confused investor in Arabic. The investor was grateful. The translator had not shown up. Denise had stepped in, unprompted. That was when Wolf knew. This wasn't just potential. This was underused brilliance. According to me, the most dangerous assumption in any company is that value wears a badge. What Denise proved was value speaks, and sometimes it speaks 9 languages. And Wolf, he was finally listening. Wolf didn't waste time. After their meeting, he had her HR file pulled just basic employment info. Nothing new. But the next few days, he started testing what he already suspected. He deliberately rerouted 2 international guest visits through the main lobby. Both times, Denise intercepted smoothly, once in Italian, once in Swahili. No falter, no script, just ease. He asked his assistant to send a few trial documents untranslated through internal print delivery. French reports, German supplier letters, a Portuguese licensing form. All of them landed at Denise's station under random pretenses. Within hours, they returned with yellow sticky notes. Every error circled, every nuance explained. One day, he brought her into a planning session for a cultural onboarding project, informally, of course, just to observe. 10 minutes in, she spoke up. Politely, pointed out that one of the Arabic slogans, when literally translated, came off as insulting. Everyone in the room froze. She offered 3 better alternatives. The entire project shifted. Someone from marketing later asked, "What's her actual job again?" Whispers became murmurs. Murmurs became tension. In the cafeteria, one of the senior managers made a joke too loud. "Maybe I should mop floors if that's how you get promoted now." It was meant to be funny. It wasn't. Denise felt it. The shift. Some doors opened. Others slammed shut. Still, she kept showing up. Still cleaned the floors. Still answered questions in 5 languages before 9 a.m. Wolf started to notice something else. People came to her. Not just for help, for perspective, for clarity. As if her view from the ground floor came with something the rest had lost at the top. He watched her de-escalate a near argument between 2 regional reps in the hallway. One spoke English, the other didn't. Denise bridged them like a pro. No spotlight. Just solved it. Later, Wolf pulled her aside. "Have you ever worked with financial models?" She shook her head. "No, but I listen. A lot. When I clean near the strategy rooms, I hear everything. I look things up at night. My daughter jokes that I know more than the interns." He chuckled, then paused. "Would you be willing to try something new?" She hesitated. "Depends. Is this a favor or a real shot?" He looked her in the eye. "A real shot. According to me, it's not the titles that predict leadership. It's what people do when no one's watching." Denise didn't ask for anything. She just kept showing you who she really was. And finally, someone was ready to act on it. And what Wolf did next would change everything, not just for Denise, but for the company. It happened on a Thursday. Denise was mopping the marble floor outside Conference Hall C, just another morning. She kept her head down, earbuds in low volume, but not so low that she couldn't hear. Inside the room, voices rose, heated. A visiting investor from Dubai sat across from Wolf's finance team, his face tightening. One translator was fumbling confusing asset guarantee with performance bonus. Subtle mistake, huge risk. Denise paused. She looked around. No one else seemed to notice. She stepped closer. Then she did something that even surprised herself. She knocked gently on the glass. Wolf turned. So did the visitor. Denise opened the door slightly. "Apologies," she said, "but I think there's a translation issue. That phrase doesn't mean what you think it does." The visitor blinked. "You speak Arabic?" She nodded. "You're talking about capital protection, not bonus yield. It's in how the clause is ordered. I can clarify it if that's okay." The room fell silent. Wolf gestured. "Please." "Sakum." Denise stepped in, adjusted her tone, and rephrased the clause in fluent formal Arabic. The investor's shoulders dropped. He smiled. "That makes sense now. Thank you, Weke Nonor." Denise nodded once and stepped back out. No one said a word for 5 seconds. Then Wolf looked at the translator, then at his finance director, then down the hall where Denise had disappeared. Later that day, he found her again. "Do you have a few minutes?" "Right now." "Yes. There's a situation upstairs." It was urgent. A delegation from Brazil had arrived early. Their contact person was delayed. No one spoke Portuguese on site. Panic rippled through the logistics team. Wolf brought Denise in. She didn't hesitate. Walked in, shook hands, introduced herself in native Brazilian Portuguese. "Calm, fluid, clear." She didn't just translate. She connected. 20 minutes later, what could have been a disaster became a success. One of the delegates even said she should run the meeting. By the time she stepped out, Wolf had already made a note in his planner, Denise's potential role expansion. That night, he reviewed the building's organizational chart. Dozens of roles, none for what she could do, nothing even close. He stared at the blank space beneath the international strategy column. Something clicked. He sat back in his chair, fingers steepled. All these years building cross-border teams, investing in consultants, translating visions into quarterly targets. And yet right here in a janitor's uniform stood the clearest, sharpest edge he had seen in years. It made him uncomfortable, not because she was unqualified, but because she was overqualified and overlooked. Repeatedly, by everyone including himself. He tapped his pen against the table. There had to be a place for her. No, he needed to create one. According to me, this was the real turning point. Not because she impressed them, but because she didn't wait for permission. She stepped into the moment when others froze. And from that moment on, her name wasn't just whispered, it was written. In rooms where she'd never even been invited. She was 10 when she first heard the word scholarship. Her father, a pipe fitter, had come home with grease on his hands and a newspaper folded to the education section. You get good enough, he told her, and someone out there will pay for the rest. Denise believed him. Every spelling bee win, every book devoured, every extra credit essay, she did it for that distant, invisible promise. Their home in Toledo, Ohio was small but solid. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. Her mother worked night shifts as a nurse's aide, often coming home just as Denise was leaving for school. They'd pass each other in the hallway like ships. College felt like a miracle. Kent State. It's just here during full ride. Linguistics major. Denise walked those halls with a sense of quiet pride. She didn't party. She didn't drift. She translated poems for fun. She called her parents every night. Then her mother fell. At first, it was just fatigue, then confusion, then a diagnosis. Denise withdrew mid-semester. She came home, took over the bills, the cooking, the care. Her father worked extra shifts until one night his chest gave out in the garage. She found him the next morning. 2 funerals, 1 newborn, no degree. Denise got what work she could. Checked groceries, changed sheets in nursing homes, temped in filing rooms. By the time her daughter turned 3, she was a janitor, and still she kept learning. Late nights, she'd sit at the kitchen table with old textbooks. She taught herself grammar structures between cleaning shifts. She watched foreign news paused. The screen wrote translations by hand. One winter, the power went out. She wrapped her daughter in blankets, held her close, and stared at the unpaid electric bill on the table. Her fingers trembled, not from cold but from shame. But she didn't break. She whispered French lullabies to calm her daughter. She recited Spanish verb tenses in her mind to stay sharp. She told herself, this is temporary, not the end. Years later, when people would ask her how she learned 9 languages, she'd shrug. 1 sentence at a time. In the dark with no heat and no plan B. According to me, stories like Denise's don't need tragedy to be powerful. The truth already stings enough. What makes her different isn't the pain, it's that she never let it define her. And when the past finally loosened its grip, the future began calling her name louder than ever before. She remembered the first time she realized she was good with languages. It wasn't in a classroom, it was in a hospital waiting room. Her mother, barely awake, needed to fill out paperwork, but the staff only spoke English. Next to them sat an old Haitian man, confused, frustrated. Denise had picked up some French from borrowed audio tapes. She stepped in, just a few words, enough to help him explain his symptoms. The nurse looked at her like she was magic. Later, when she told her father, he smiled through tired eyes and said, "You don't just hear words. You hear people wade marhan on ever son in ring for main one." She held on to that. Years passed. Denise would help her daughter with homework, sometimes in English, sometimes in Spanish, just to stretch her mind. One evening they played a game. How many ways could they say hope in Swahili? In Italian? In Arabic? Her daughter laughed, mispronouncing half the words. Denise didn't correct her. She just joined in. That's how it always started. A word here, a sentence there, stitched into nights where silence could have swallowed her whole. And quietly, steadily, Denise built something no resume could capture: resilience in every language she touched. The fluorescent lights in the janitor's supply room buzzed faintly. Denise was restocking microfiber cloths when she heard the familiar voice. "Mind if I bother you again?" She turned. Wolf was standing in the doorway, not in a suit this time, but rolled up sleeves, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I figured you didn't get a break this morning." She took the cup cautiously. "Thanks." He didn't sit, just leaned against the frame. There's another investor group coming in this afternoon. East African fund managers. Translator dropped out. Denise looked down at the cart, then back at him. You want me to step in again? Only if you're up for it. She hesitated. Not out of fear, out of habit. Years of being background noise made her doubt if she belonged in conversations where suits carried the room. Wolf noticed. I'm not asking out of desperation, he said. I'm asking because you're the most qualified person in this building for the job. That made her blink. She nodded slowly. All right. I'll do it. That afternoon, she walked into conference room 5B wearing the same uniform, but this time the air around her shifted. Colleagues glanced up, some confused, others curious, a few guarded. She greeted the investors in perfect Swahili. There was a half-second pause before anyone reacted. Denise could feel her pulse in her neck. She'd walked into that room with nothing but words, no badge, no title, no armor. But the moment the first investor smiled back, she remembered who she was. Smiles bloomed. Walls dropped. Within minutes, they were deep into conversation, no tension in sight. Outside the room, two junior staffers watched through the glass. Isn't that the janitor? She's translating policy documents. In real time, she's good. Back in the supply room later that day, Denise sat on a low stool, sipping what was left of the coffee. Her hands still smelled like disinfectant. But something had shifted. According to me, the most remarkable moment wasn't the meeting. It was the look in Denise's eyes when Wolf said she was the most qualified. When you've lived in shadows long enough, even kindness can make you blink. But blink or not, she showed up. And this time, no one could look away. The email hit inboxes at 8:30. No, from Ethan Wolf. Subject staff announcement, Denise Atwater. It was short, direct, and it echoed through every hallway of Helix Global like a thunderclap. Effective immediately, Denise Atwater will be assuming the role of cultural liaison for international affairs. Her linguistic fluency, cross-cultural understanding, and commitment to excellence reflect the values we strive for. Please join me in welcoming her into this new chapter. No fluff. No asterisks. Just fact. By 8:07, whispers had turned to group chats. By 8:15, Denise's name was trending on the internal Slack channels. Most congratulated. Some questioned. A few scoffed. I've been here 5 years, one analyst typed. She cleaned my keyboard last month. Another replied, maybe she should be running this place. She probably knows more languages than the entire exec team. At 9 hours sharp, Denise walked into her new office on the 12th floor. Modest neutral walls. A plant in the corner someone had already placed. Her name on the door in brushed steel. She didn't sit, just stood for a moment taking it in, breathing it in. Not awe, not pride, just recognition. Wolf came by 20 minutes later, handed her a formal onboarding packet, then paused. You okay, he asked. Denise nodded. I will be, but not everyone was as ready. In the break room, a senior marketing exec rolled her eyes. It's a PR stunt. Watch her shibwish. She'll be gone in 3 months. At the same time, Eleanor Craig, a legacy board member with decades under her belt, requested a closed-door meeting. Denise received the invite late that afternoon. Location 17th floorboard conference room. She walked in the next day wearing the same black flats she always did. That morning, Wolf had personally called HR to ensure Denise's access badge had full clearance. No more janitor-only zones. No more waiting at service elevators. When she tapped her badge at the 17th floor, the light turned green immediately. People in the hallway stared as she passed, not with hostility but confusion, admiration, curiosity. She carried a notebook, not to impress, but because she had questions of her own. Eleanor was already seated back straight, file folder in hand. Miss Atwater, she began, not looking up. Please sit. Denise sat, hands folded in her lap. I've reviewed your file. No degree, no certifications, no prior corporate leadership. And yet here you are. Yes, ma'am. You understand the optics of this, yes, the precedent. I understand I've solved 3 cross-border issues this month that had been stuck for quarters. Eleanor's brow twitched. With no formal training, with experience. With listening, with context most people overlook. You think that's enough to sustain a C-level role? Denise didn't flinch. I think it's enough to start with. The rest I'm learning every day. Silence. Eleanor leaned back, watching her. You're a risk. I always have been, Denise replied. That's why I'm still here. According to me, I've never seen anyone move from supply closets to strategy tables in a week. But Denise didn't walk alone. She brought with her the silent weight of everyone overlooked, everyone underestimated, everyone unseen. And the table wasn't ready for that. The boardroom remained silent for a long moment. Then Eleanor closed the file slowly. I'm not here to discourage you, Miss Atwater. I'm here because I need to know if this company's leap of faith is grounded in something real. Denise didn't miss a beat. Then you should come observe. Sit in on a vendor call. Watch how I manage the Morocco documents. Or better yet, review the feedback from São Paulo. I don't need to explain myself if the work speaks. Eleanor studied her. And you really think you're ready? No, Denise answered. But I'm not waiting until I am, because if I did, I'd still be cleaning floors. It was the kind of response that didn't come from arrogance, but from living too many years beneath potential. By the end of the meeting, Eleanor didn't smile, but she nodded once. That was enough. The next morning, an internal survey showed a spike in employee engagement. Comments like, she gives me hope. If she can do it, why not me? I never knew brilliance could sound like Swahili on a Tuesday. Denise didn't change her routine. Still used the staff kitchen. Still packed her daughter's lunch before sunrise. Still kept her ID badge from the janitor roll in her drawer. But others changed. An intern from accounting asked if she'd review his German pitch deck. A security guard shyly thanked her for making us visible. And then came the call. From a partner in Dubai, "We want to meet your cultural liaison," the man said. She made our entire team feel respected. No one's ever done that. Wolf passed her the phone. Denise listened, answered in Arabic, and by the end of the call, they had confirmed 3 new contracts. That afternoon, Wolf stood in the glass corridor outside her office. "She just saved us 3/4 of negotiations," he said to his COO. The COO replied, and she did it without a single PowerPoint. According to me, Denise didn't just shift perceptions. She cracked the ceiling not just for herself, but for every silent genius, pushing a mop, scanning a badge, or refilling water stations while dreaming in 9 languages. And the message was clear: value isn't earned by climbing a ladder. Sometimes it rises straight from the floor. The ripple had begun. Later that week, during the quarterly strategy session, Wolf stood before the leadership team. Charts lined the screens. Projections, losses, forecasts. But halfway through his slide deck, he stopped. "We've spent months talking about expansion," he said. "But the most effective global win we've had this quarter came from a person we didn't even include in the room until now." He nodded toward the far end of the table. Denise sat there quietly taking notes. A few heads turned. One executive from finance lowered his pen. "I know some of you are still adjusting," Wolf continued. "That's fine. Imanarin, but growth demands discomfort. But let me be clear, Denise isn't here as a token or a symbol. She's here because she's delivering results. And because leadership isn't about where you started. It's about where you take people." No one spoke, but someone clapped. Then another, and another. Denise looked down, half smiling. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of how others finally learned to listen. In the weeks that followed, Denise kept doing what she did best: showing up, listening, solving. When a multi-million-dollar contract with a Nordic tech firm hit a cultural snag, Denise stepped in. She rewrote the pitch notes in Swedish, smoothed out language that sounded aggressive to Scandinavian partners, and coached the legal team through the cultural implications of the phrasing. Deal closed. Days later, the Morocco delegation arrived. There had been tension for months: miscommunications, unmet deadlines, broken trust. Denise greeted them in Moroccan Arabic, led the meeting, anticipated their concerns before they were voiced. By the time Wolf entered the room, the tone had already shifted from combative to collaborative. That was her power. She changed rooms before anyone else knew they needed changing. Gradually, resistance turned to recognition. The finance department asked for her insights before launching a cross-border payment system. Legal consulted her on 3 contracts. PR invited her to sit in on crisis prep meetings. She didn't ask to be in those rooms. But now they didn't feel complete without her. And then one Monday morning, every employee who stepped into the Helix Global Training Center stopped in their tracks. The brass plaque outside the door had changed. Atwater Room, training for global thinking. No email announcement. Turn up on. No ribbon cutting. Just a quiet, permanent tribute. A place named not after tenure or donation, but after action. Denise stood across the hall unnoticed, watching a new batch of interns file in. One paused, glanced at the plaque, and whispered, "Who's Atwater?" His mentor replied, "Someone who reminded this company that fluency isn't about language, it's about seeing people." According to me, no ceremony could match that. No title, no award, no framed photo. Just a room that carried her name not for who she was, but for what she made others believe about themselves. And from that day on, every new hire who walked through that door didn't just learn about Helix's operations. They learned what value really looks like. A janitor's badge in a desk drawer, a voice in 9 languages, and the courage to use both. The echo of that courage never left the room. One Friday afternoon, a tweet from a minor supplier exploded online, accusing Helix of miscommunication and cultural disrespect in an earlier email chain. The PR team scrambled. Legal wanted to respond formally. Wolf hesitated. Denise asked for 15 minutes. She drafted a single-page reply in both English and Arabic balancing apology with cultural nuance. The tweet thread vanished within the hour, replaced by an update from the same supplier. We appreciate the clarity and respect. Thank you, Helix. After that, no one questioned why she had a seat in every crisis meeting. Wolf watched quietly as his department heads circled around her, not out of obligation, but instinct. They weren't just tolerating Denise. They were following her lead. Denise never asked for a stage, but when it came, she stood on it without blinking. It began with a simple conversation in the break room. A younger custodian asked her, "How did you know you had more to give?" Denise didn't answer right away. Instead, she invited him to her office, showed him a binder labeled Voice Inside, Pilot Program. Created with Wolf's full support, the initiative was simple offer, language training, mentorship, and cross-training opportunities to all non-executive staff. No prerequisites, just potential. Denise didn't just oversee it, she built it. Reviewed every application herself. Paired kitchen staff with translators, janitors with legal clerks, drivers with finance interns. And it worked. Word spread. Enrollment doubled. Morale spiked. People began staying late, not because they had to, but because they were learning, dreaming. Wolf asked her to co-present the program at a regional finance leadership summit. She agreed on one condition: that a current trainee would speak too. So on the day of the event, Denise took the stage not alone, but beside a cafeteria assistant named Layla, who was now fluent in French and shadowing the legal department. Denise's speech wasn't dramatic. No slides, no buzzwords, just this: I was never just a janitor. I was fluent. I was ready, but I needed someone to notice. Now I notice others. Brilliance doesn't wear a title. And if you only look at resumes, you'll miss the revolution. The room was silent. Then came the applause. Wolf said he hadn't heard a standing ovation like that in a decade. By the following month, 3 other companies contacted Helix for help replicating the Voice Inside program. According to me, people who change the world don't always shout. They just wait for the mic and speak with a heart that remembers where they came from. And when Denise spoke that afternoon, no one saw a former janitor. They saw a symbol, and they stood to listen. In the weeks that followed, Denise spent every Friday afternoon with a rotating group of staff from maintenance, delivery, and cleaning services. She didn't lecture. She listened. Answered questions about language learning. Shared free resources. Gave each person a notebook and said, "Write 1 word a day." That's how I started. One afternoon, as she was packing up, a janitor named Marcos slipped her a folded note. It read, "My son told his teacher he wants to speak like Miss Denise. Thank you for making him believe smart people can look like us." Denise tucked the note into the front of her binder. She didn't frame it, didn't post it, but she read it every Monday before work, because that, more than any award, reminded her why this mattered. That's the thing about voices long silenced. When they finally speak, others begin to echo. On her desk that morning was a small envelope. No name, no return address, just her name printed in careful block letters. Inside, a single sheet of paper folded twice. "I used to think I'd be invisible forever, but today I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you, Wano." Denise stared at the words for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just sat quietly, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. Then she opened the drawer on the left side of her desk. Inside was her old janitor badge, edges worn, laminate peeling. She placed it gently next to the letter. She stood up and looked out the window where the city hummed with its usual pace. But something felt different, not louder. Just acknowledged. Before walking out, she paused by her office door. The plaque read Denise Atwater, Cultural Liaison. She touched the edge of the sign once, a brief grounding gesture, then walked into the hallway. Her stride was steady, her presence no longer questioned. As she waited for the elevator, a young intern stepped up beside her. He glanced at her badge, then back at her face. "Miss Atwater," he asked quietly. She turned. "Yes, sir." He didn't say much, just nodded almost in reverence. "Here? Thanks. For mine and the wise, sir. For everything." She smiled, not wide, just enough. "Keep learning," she said. "Then pass it on." The doors slid open. She stepped in alone. And this time the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Thank you for watching until the end. Now let me ask you this. Stay until the end. The twist will redefine what redemption truly means. If you witnessed injustice like this, what would you do? Comment below. Subscribe to Unveiled Wealth, where kindness sparks redemption and silence breaks power. The twist will redefine what redemption truly means. If you witnessed injustice like this, what would you do? Comment below. Subscribe to Unveiled Wealth, where kindness sparks redemption and silence breaks power.